Welcome to the second Booking.com People podcast. In this podcast, we'll be talking to Sophie.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I've been with Booking for almost 5 years now, mostly in our headquarters in Amsterdam, and I recently relocated to our Tel Aviv center.
And Noah.
Hello, my name is Noah Bobio, and I'm a co-product manager here at Booking.com Tel Aviv office.
We'll be discussing image recognition, voice recognition, and a whole bunch of other things.
You know, many people ask me about computer vision in Booking when I'm telling them that this is part of the topics I'm handling, and they ask me, where do you have computer vision? Which is an interesting topic because we have visual content all over the website. And when I say visual content, I mean from the point you enter to the website, you have destination photos, you have the property photos, which are accommodation, you have different other experiences photos, and then even user-provided photos as part of the reviews. So hence, you have a lot of visual content. People don't even notice that. But where do we need computer vision there is because unless we understand what the content of the photo, for computers, all photos as like bunch of numbers, a bunch of pixels arranged together. Mm-hmm. And the application of computer vision actually allows us to be more contextualized with the content which is presented to the different users.
So you are using the term computer vision, and I think this is a good point for us to sort of say, what is computer vision? Like, explain that to me a little bit, because it's actually not a term I've heard used before.
That's a good question. So computer vision is one of the applications for machine learning, for artificial intelligence domain, to understand visual content. Hence, understand different assortments of pixels which are combined together to form something which you visually would comprehend, but then computers would not comprehend unless told so, unless told this is a picture of a thing or a different scene.
Computers only see in ones and zeros, so it has to learn what those ones and zeros mean. But it's not just a case of knowing what the image is. Does computer vision mean the computer understands the context of it?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah. So it's not just the shape of, say, a mountain, this is a mountain, like a picture that is, a landscape of a specific area. Is it that kind of detailed? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a picture is not only the pixels, it can have a different style to it, mm-hmm. and it can have different daylight to it. So you can have a mountain in the morning, mountain in the evening. You can have people in the mountain, you can have different objects in it. So this is another thing to understand. And what's the feel that you get as you are looking into the picture.
And is that sort of the same sort of thing when it comes to speech? It's not just that this is speech, it's what's going on, what the context, what the emotion, what the pattern is.
Exactly, and also something I could add on what Noah just said. So for us, with speech recognition, we're in a completely different stage as computer vision. So whilst computer vision was something completely new 10 years ago, and now is very into our day-to-day at Booking, with speech recognition, it's actually something completely new that we are exploring. Despite it being something already big outside of Booking, so people are already using voice in their day-to-day, it's especially big in specific markets. There's estimates that by 2020, like 50% of the searches on the web will be done by voice. Wow. For us at Booking, it's an area that is really new and that we're kickstarting.
And with this kickstarting of it, it means that we are also learning about it, I'm guessing, still? Is it like we're also developing at the same time as we're innovating? Is that true to say, or...?
Exactly. So it is true for speech, for computer vision, but I think it's true for machine learning in general. Mm-hmm. It's a field that's really rapidly evolving, and one of the key things being a product manager in that area is that you have to be really up to date with what's happening in the market and outside.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the thing is, as a machine learning center, what you would notice, so data science as a craft is a craft that is always learning. You would say that data scientists spend most of their time either researching in general or learning other recent research and citation which has been done in the industry, even if it's like in parallel domains to what we are doing today. And this is also applicable for the product management on the data science side. So this is something which we are actively doing. If it's researching different newer technology, or understanding what could be different applications to an existing technology which is out there, or researchers. And that's kind of something which is known in the machine learning domain as a transfer learning or analogy, using a technology which was built to even in the computer vision world, even for like computer games, and then using them towards any application which is applicable on the e-tailer domain or in the commerce domain.
How would you explain this, say, to what outside of booking example would you give? I think video games was an interesting one, actually. Just how this, this transfer sort of takes. What exactly does it entail?
Yeah. So if we would look at an application outside of booking, which has been used to determine cats from dogs, which is kind of most public example, I think, that Google has posted in like a few years ago. That's an interesting but not very practical example for us, because we don't really need to understand if a certain image is a cat or a dog, but we can use some of the learning, some of the neural net towards understanding if this is a bedroom or this is a bathroom in the property. So let's say we take some of the logic of it, but then we encompass it with additional coding, additional algorithms, which we built here in the center in order to understand those things.
That's really interesting. And I was about to say, in terms of Sophie and like coming at this from like a speech point of view, obviously the whole, as you said, speech is being used all the time and will soon become one of the most used forms of search, or at least half the most used forms of search. What is it that we're looking for from speech recognition?
So in regards to speech recognition, what we're focusing on is where we think we can add value is the speech to text part. And what we're doing is we're using all the learning that has been done externally outside of booking in regards to language models. So what a language model does is it translates sound waves into actual phonemes.
And what is a phoneme?
Very good question. So a phoneme is actually sounds that form a word. So for example, phonemes would be phonemes. And this is a technology that's already available outside and that we're just reusing. Where we bring value as booking is actually further down the funnel. Once you have all these phonemes that are actually forming words, you need to add some context to help machines understand what are the words and what are the sentences. And this is the thing that we can really work on at booking, because the data we're using is very specific to our industry, very specific to our business.
So what is the challenge when it comes to recognizing how words are said?
So the biggest challenge with phonemes compared to like words or sentences is what has been said. This is way easier to understand thanks to the context around it. For phonemes specifically is how have things been said, and you can see there that the challenge would be around language. So you need to understand the language, you need to know the language in order to understand the phonemes associated to that language.
Mm-hmm. So something that I'm going through at the moment is, while I'm trying to learn Dutch, is that I can look at a word in a sentence and understand it, because the rest of the sentence is already telling me what I kind of need to know. However, the difficulty is if someone just says that one specific word to me, without the context of it, I have no idea what it means. Because I didn't know what it meant in the sentence, I just understood what the sentence meant. Mm-hmm. Is that a little bit of...
It's a really nice way to put it, actually. the conclusion is the sound actually doesn't resonate with you. It does, like the sound itself of a word doesn't mean anything for you. But placed into a specific context, then you can understand it.
And is this sort of similar with like computer vision? Like you can make out what pixels mean, but you know the individual image specifically requires context. It requires understanding, you know, I suppose shapes and colors, but even more than shapes and colors. I suppose. Sorry, you're better at explaining this than me, so I'm going to let you do it.
So what you have just described, the way that you are learning Dutch and the contextual meaning of a word in a sentence when you are less familiar with that word, is a field in machine learning which is called recurrent neural net, which means that understanding based on a sequence or sequence that repeats themselves, predicting in a very high probability what would be the next word or a word which fits in a certain place. Surprisingly, it's also being used in computer vision, because in computer vision, when we are trying to caption an image, which is a very up-and-coming field in order to search, in order to kind of associate an image to a certain other type of content, we would also use those sequence-based mapping, which is if we understand that there is a bed, but we want to find what would be the most likely word and based on different options that we have, that is where we would use that as well.
So it's like machine learning for meta descriptions.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So rather than and this all comes from, you know, building models, and I'm guessing if you're looking at things that are 2D, you know, like an image or something that lives in a waveform, they must be incredibly complex. Can you explain to me the complexity of building these models?
It's a good question. Building machine learning models is complex and time consuming, and from different reasons. So just to understand what's behind it, when you go towards building a machine learning model, you need a lot of data. Why is that? You would think or ask is so us as humans, or even if you take a small child and that child would be touching something exposed wire and get electric shock, he would know not to touch it again. If you do that analogy to computers, they would need like thousands of those electric shocks in order to understand that this is not something to be touched. So the same with understanding that a chair is a chair and a phoneme or a certain word has a certain meaning. So that means that we need a lot of data and specify what this data point stands for. So this is an image of a chair, and we need to have a lot of those, you know, and in a lot of shapes or a lot of different combinations, and even data which is kind of what's not a chair. This is similar, but it's not. It's a table. So and you fit those into the machine learning model. So that's about having a lot of data in order to generate a machine learning model. But just to get to that point of having all that data, which is, we call it labeled, a data that has a meaning to it, that's even by itself a long process. And I think Sophie can share more about what, Sophie, do you want to talk about the annotation work, which is done in towards, and like what's the challenges around that?
So I can talk about it specifically for speech recognition and for voice to text. For us, in order for us to train our models to help our machines understand what has been said in a conversation, for example, we actually need humans. We actually need humans to annotate a lot of data. So basically what we have is humans, is people, listening into conversations and manually writing down what has been said in the conversation. This is in order for us to then feed all this data back into our models and help our machines learn patterns and learn to understand what is being said in voice, in speech.
The necessity of this in speech is to ensure accuracy, right? Like you have to have human confirmation, because machines will never be able to accurately understand what a word is in context or not? Or I'm sorry, am I right with this? Or
So the challenge with annotation of voice and audio transcript is that you need someone with a specific skill set of understanding that specific language, which needs to scale. And if we talk about a booking.com use case, we are serving in 43 languages today, which is quite a challenge if you want to get a very detailed annotation or very detailed transcription for different voices and different languages. That by itself is slightly different on the image domain, by the way, because someone living in a non-English speaking country can still annotate images and can still understand the same notion of image, although there is a different set of biases which comes into play. So if, for example, I want to check which images I want to gather a data of images which would be considered as romantic or as fun. There are different thresholds of fun to different people, and there are different cultural biases towards what's considered fun, what's considered social or romantic towards different scenes. So this is another challenge that you come across when you are annotating images.
so then when it comes to the annotations, do you almost have to give the annotators like a rule book, like as almost like a model to work from? Otherwise, everyone inputs their own bias onto it, and so how does that work? Because that must be kind of complicated to set a set of rules out for everything.
Exactly. So that's actually a very important part when getting annotations done. For us, for example, there's very simple considerations like, are you gonna write words in British English or American English? What do you do with sounds like hesitation, like like laughs, background noise? How do you treat those?
I had not really thought about because people in different ways, and how do you pick up what's a or an or if it's actually the beginning of a word?
Exactly, and actually the is a very interesting example, because a could be a mark of hesitation, like I don't really know what I want to say, but it could also be a sign of approbation, like
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
So there's different ways to interpret these sounds, and we need to make sure that annotators know how to correctly mark them.
So are there particular sets of words that are really difficult for annotators? You know, we talked about things like and but there must be words themselves, not just sounds, that are difficult.
Yeah, very good question. Another example I can think about is the specific jargon around your product or around your business. So you might be working on something that is using specific words that are not common words outside of your product or your business. And this is something also really important to highlight to annotators and tell them that these are words that they are likely to encounter when doing the annotations.
Actually, I have a question related to this then that goes with computer vision, which is not necessarily jargon, but understanding the specifics of, so when it comes to annotation for images, say what an ensuite is. And like, to some people it may be a different thing. So again, I suppose this comes to the rule book, but are there specific images that are really difficult to categorize and that have been found to be really difficult to define?
Yeah, that's a good point. And the thing is, alongside with a guidebook that is built to towards the annotation work, we are also kind of interviewing the people who are annotating and understanding them and asking them a few questions about their background, about their travel experience, just to see that they are and they have the same understanding as us for those terminology, for those things. And just a small example is that for example, winter has a different meaning in different places in the world. So here in Tel Aviv, we are sitting with our short shirts, while in Amsterdam, and this is the winter, and while in Amsterdam it's snowing at this very moment. So winter is a very subjective, even by itself, although people understand what it is.
There are places, for instance, Singapore, which has a differing climate, but they don't really experience summer and winter. It's not like it's really cold and really warm now. So when it comes to defining these things, do we worry about the models we're building using this? Is there like a hesitation because it's so complex, or do we try and find a way around it?
So this is where product management comes in, because you can build different kind of models, but you need to have in mind what is the application for the model. You would obviously, if you are looking into a place which has less seasonality, let's say like in Tel Aviv, you would not build a winter model to understand winter and images, because it would be pretty much the same all the time. But then you would need to find kind of more seasonal areas, more seasonal properties or even activities which you would apply this into, and this is where the products comes into mind, and even building what's the business goal to and what's the impact that we want to achieve with that model.
So I know before, actually, when we were outside, you didn't hear this, listeners, but so a good model is all about how it's used, right? So I think this leads us into a nice thing here where we can, because I kind of understand the very basics of building a model. I understand that you take lots of data and you do maths that are way above my head, and you get the model to figure out how that data then tells you a result. But how do you do that well? Because you can obviously do that badly and get the wrong kind of results. So how do you do that well? How do you make sure that it is good for the user?
So even when building a machine learning model, you need to look at it from a product management perspective towards what is the very minimal thing that we can build towards just assessing our hypothesis. So if our hypothesis is that a certain type of more wintry images apply in different cases or relevant to different users, we would take the very minimal thing we can build in machine learning if it's understanding more of a snowy pictures, which would be a substance of white pixels combined together. If we go into the very lower level of it, before we build a full-fledged computer vision of understanding different levels of ski activities and just testing those in reality and the way that we do in booking, which means we are surfacing a different variation of our websites in an A/B testing approach, and I think you can go to different of the blog post podcast to listen and hear more about those, and then we assess if we validated our hypothesis to move forward to the next level of machine learning.
And what are the other applications of both computer vision and speech recognition? For me, I realize that they're not necessarily new technologies, but for me, the way they're used is still way beyond my understanding. What else can they do? Where can we go from here? What else can these things take us?
So for voice specifically, there's two main areas we're looking into. The first one being we want to help serve our customers faster and better after they've made a booking. So you've made a booking, whatever support you would require from us, we're here to help you faster and better with voice. The second area we're looking into is I started the podcast talking about search with voice. So that's also another area we're looking into, being able to allowing you to interact with us using their voice. However, voice is just one small part of what we call natural language processing in general. So eventually our vision is however you want to interact with booking, you should be able to do it, whether it's with your voice, whether it's texting to a machine or chatting to a machine or talking to humans directly on our phone, on the phone.
Can we recognize aggressive tone compared to sad, for instance? if someone is calling about disappointment or if someone's calling about happiness, and enjoyment, are these things that we can pick up?
Yeah, a very interesting concept and idea. So this field is called, it's around sentiment analysis. So it's around understanding the sentiment of a conversation or a sentence. And it combines both what type of words are being used and also the tone of voice. The tone of voice.
All of this that we've been talking about is coming out of this, it's not coming out of this one place. I realise that we have machine learning all across booking, but right now we are sat in a progressively warming meeting room in the Tel Aviv office. And it is interesting that we're not the only big tech company who see Tel Aviv as a machine learning center. In fact, the building we are sat in, I'm not going to name them, because we don't care about them, but there's a ton of them. On the floors below us, which is important, we're above them. But yeah, we are sat in an office in Tel Aviv, surrounded by data scientists and product managers and developers and UX designers who all are working with machine learning here. Why?
So as a native Tel Avivian, I actually born and grew up in Tel Aviv, and this is kind of, it didn't strike me until I started working outside of Israel. I started working in the US, in which I noticed that Tel Aviv, or Israel in general, is referred to as the startup nation. I don't know, did you happen to hear that?
Yeah.
I heard it too, but yesterday. So yeah.
Oh, okay. And do you know why it's called the startup nation?
No.
So it's been called that because it has more startup per capita more than anywhere else in the world.
Oh wow.
Including the Silicon Valley, including the US, which is known to have a lot of startups.
Mm-hmm.
And this, together with a very rich tech knowledge, and specifically in the machine learning model and data science, has brought a lot of tech giants.
And Sophie, you are a transition from our headquarters in Amsterdam to Tel Aviv. Do you notice just from moving that there is this sense of it being a machine learning hub and that things are being done here that are innovative?
Exactly. So I'm not a Tel Aviv native, but I am a Booking.com. So I relocated from Amsterdam, and I must say that it's true that here we definitely value like bold steps and innovation, especially around machine learning. So we work on, as you may have noticed in this podcast, like bigger topics that are quite ambitious and also that will drive the growth of tomorrow. But these are the bookings of tomorrow that we're preparing here in Tel Aviv.
And do you think it's really beneficial to be able to have a space like this where you can just work on things of tomorrow? It doesn't have to be an immediately implemented development, that you can look a little further into the future. Is that something that speeds up growth?
Yeah. So it's two things. It's one, being immersed in this community. So the community, which is much wider than what we have here in the Tel Aviv office.
It's probably going to be impossible to edit some of that out. So someone is kindly emptying the dishwasher while we do this podcast.
Yeah. And like you mentioned other floors, but most of those people are people that know, and the people who work here. There are very dense communities in terms of meetups. Every evening almost there are meetups in different sub-domains of machine learning, which is amazing. If it's voice to text, natural language processing, or computer vision, and even different fields within the computer vision for different applications.
And that's interesting when you were saying about the community side of things, because actually that's something I think I'm going to a meetup tonight. I won't be able to understand any of it probably. I don't know if it's in English, but Yeah, there's a meetup tonight. There was one yesterday as well. So it's really interesting that there's this community of sharing and, you know, and being immersed in it. There's this idea of like being able to go, okay, we're all learning about it at the same time. So let's share. I think that's really nice. Do you think the future then kind of is being created now here in Tel Aviv?
Yeah, I truly believe so. And to add to it, I believe that companies, if and that's in general, companies would not invest in building a newer technology that can scale their business using machine learning, artificial intelligence, will just not survive in the next 5 to 10 years.
And just to wrap up then, I think what I would really love to just ask you guys is, what do you think the future will hold?
As we deliberately generate diversity within the people who are working on the algorithms, we are also being able to generate more balanced algorithms and less bias.
I love that. It sits so comfortably with Booking and our international, like, inclusive environment that we're even making our algorithms inclusive and international and diverse. So that's good. I will let us leave the room, which is now no longer getting progressively warm, but is just actually warm, and say thank you so much to both Sophie and Noah for giving me their time. And yeah, thanks very much to you.
So I'd just like to say thank you to Sophie and Noah once again. And despite dishwasher emptying interruptions, it was lovely speaking to them. In future podcasts, we will be discussing more things related to machine learning, but this time in our Amsterdam office. And we'll be getting to meet some other people from around the company who are helping us innovate our products in fantastic and interesting new ways. So stay tuned. And you can find all our Booking.com people podcasts at our careers site, careers.booking.com. Just go to the blog page and you'll be able to find them there. In fact, careers.booking.com is where you can find all kinds of stuff out about our company, our people, our culture, and obviously our latest jobs.